A few months after I started Dream Prague, I got a little nervous about exposing myself on the internet. When you're just sharing things with family and friends on Facebook, it seems, safe to show your house, your neighborhood, maybe your spouse. But when several thousand strangers start watching your videos, you start to think, maybe I'm a little too exposed. Exposed in a different way. Maybe I was putting too many personal details about myself out there on the internet, and they might come back to haunt me or stalk me. So last month, some creepster tracked down another one of my email addresses and wrote me several very long, insulting emails about how my Czech pronunciation is terrible and my videos were stupid, and just a slew of other personal insults. And he also told me that he knew my icho and wrote what it was, followed by, "Don't worry, I'm not a stalker. Your icho is publicly available." Now, for those of you who don't know, an icho is a personal identification number in Czechia. It's a government-issued number specific to independent contractors like me that I use to invoice my clients. So first, super creepy of him to look that number up and write it in an email. But second, Creepster wasn't wrong. My icho is publicly available, and basically all he can do with it is issue an invoice on my behalf. But because I was raised in the United States, I was initially shocked and concerned because in the US, if a stranger has possession of certain personal identifying information, they can basically steal your identity. So telling a stranger you have certain numbers or private information about them is really quite a threat. So in this video, I want to get into the different ways that Czechs and Americans identify their citizens, protect or don't protect that information, protect their digital privacy, and which country's system is better for the people who live there. The differences in how the US and Czechia treat personal information somewhat reflects the character of those two nations. Americans, in theory, like to keep government out of our affairs. We're cowboys, we're rebels. We want to keep those filthy government hands off our Medicare. We don't even let the government issue us national ID cards. I'll get to ID cards in a minute. But in practice, like the quote says, we just kind of hand over all of our information to big tech without questioning it. It's like we believe in the goodwill of big corporations more than in the goodwill of our own government. Now, I wouldn't say that the Czechs trust their government more. They've got plenty of complaints. But in my opinion, they're just more practical about how the government functions in their lives. And they don't believe that the government is evil and has some big plan to take control. Although they have way more reason to believe that than Americans do. I would say that the Czechs are equally as cynical of big corporations as of their government. So maybe the main difference is that in general, Americans believe we have the individual power to control our own destinies. This is why we always ask to speak to the manager. And the Czechs are like, meh, I am one man. What can I do about such things? That might be a topic for another video. So in the United States, with the exception of only a handful of states, there are very few laws protecting the digital privacy of Americans. Every time we sign up for something online or put in our name and birthday and credit card number, address, and God forbid our social security number, I'll get into social securities and the Czech version of that in a minute, that information can be sold to data brokers or leaked. And it often is. Target, maybe America's favorite store, had a huge data leak a few years back. So even if your favorite corporations swear to keep their customers' info private, it can still get out. On the other hand, as part of the European Union, residents of the Czech Republic have the right to be more in control of what personal information is on the internet. They have this big law called the GDPR, which basically says that companies cannot keep your personal info on file without your explicit consent, so it's less susceptible to a leak. Czechs also have the right to be forgotten. So you have the right to notify Facebook and Sephora and Batya individually that you want them to erase all of your personal data. But let's be honest, those GDPR notifications that pop up on every website, do you really ever go in and adjust your settings? I just click, go for it, take my data. I ain't got time to manage my cookies. Am I the only one who does that? Okay. So while the GDPR is on the right track, it's not a perfect solution, but it's better than what most of America has. And while I might have made the choice to put myself out there on the internet, certain members of my entourage have not.
First, I let her post a photo of me on her Instagram. Then I gave her permission to make a YouTube video about me. Now I'm getting recognized on the streets, and my inbox is filled with adverts and coupons for so much dog food I could not possibly eat it. And it's not just because of my fame. Anyone who has a presence on the web is being tracked. Once I was surfing the net, and the site asked me if I accept cookies. Of course I accept cookies. I accept any food that falls from the table. And then, bam, my personal information was out there, and now I can't even log on without being tempted by a dog toy I can't afford. That's why I signed up for INCOGNI. With INCOGNI's unique data privacy service, I was able to get my personal information scrubbed from databases trying to store and sell it for profit. INCOGNI contacts data brokers on your behalf, so you don't have to contact each company individually. They get your name removed from lists that are sold to third parties. With INCOGNI, you can take back control of your personal information and have the peace of mind that it isn't being used against you. If you're sick of your personal information being scattered all over the internet, sign up for INCOGNI in the link in the description box below. Use code DREAMPRAGUE to get an exclusive 60% off an annual INCOGNI plan. And please stop trying to pet me on the street. It stresses Jen out.
Both the US and the Czech Republic have unique identifying numbers for its citizens and for people who work in their countries. In the US, we have the Social Security number. In the Czech Republic, we have the rodné číslo, or birth number. The Social Security number was created back in the 30s to give workers Social Security benefits. But then, things got way out of hand. First, the US tax authorities started using it, and then banks and credit card companies started using it. And now, if you want to buy a car or rent an apartment, they ask for your Social Security number. The Social Security office even warned, nobody use this number for ID purposes. Nobody listened, and everybody used it. The number comes printed on this ridiculous piece of flimsy perforated paper. You're not allowed to laminate it, you have to keep it for your entire life, and you can't show it to anybody, unless they ask for it. The numbers are related to the geographical area where you applied from and the order in which you were born. Americans just commit it to memory and then try to lock it away. The Czechs have the rodné číslo, or birth number. I kind of just assumed that it was left over from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Austrians like to put numbers on things. Empress Maria Theresa sent her minions out to put addresses on all the buildings in her empire, at least in Prague. Also, anytime I complain about Czech bureaucracy, the Czechs say, oh, this is from the Austrian days. But the rodné číslo actually started in the late 40s after the war to keep track of work permits. And then in 48, insurance companies started using this number to keep track of who was insured, and now because everyone has to have health insurance, everyone has a rodné číslo. Even I have one. The first two numbers are your year of birth, the second two are your month of birth, the third two are your date of birth. Fun fact, if you're a woman, you get an extra 50 on your month numbers. So unlike the American system, the rodné číslo reveals not only your birthday, but also your gender. Now, there's nothing inherently different about the social security number and the rodné číslo. They're both just identifying numbers. But the big difference is that in the US, if someone has your name, your address, and your social security number, they could use it to open a bank account, to open a credit card, to rent an apartment, or even get a job in your name. According to the authorities I consulted, criminals can't do much with the rodné číslo without other documents. They can't really steal your identity. They'd need other forms of ID, like your ID we'll get into with the ID number, some photo ID, some passwords, but just having that number is not enough. Now here's something interesting. For over a decade, the Czech government has been threatening to get rid of the rodné číslo and replace it with a very confusing set of other numbers. Why? The only reasoning I could find in my research was that the ladies don't like that it reveals their gender and their birth date. And I asked myself, are we ladies really that fragile? Maybe some people have changed their gender, so that for them is a problem. But to replace the rodné číslos with a different system would cost several billion crowns. Seems like a lot. But the Czechs are set to run out of possible numbers by the year 2054, so that might actually force a new system. But right now, they're just gonna go to the pub and complain about it, because there's beer to drink. I kid, but come on, we'll fix it another day. Americans are so afraid of government overreach that we do not even have a national ID card. No siree, bub. We'll gladly post our religious beliefs, our politics, our home addresses, our pets' names, and photos of our kids on Facebook, but put our faces and names in the same government database? Hell no. 170 countries have national ID cards, and we are proudly not one of them. Oddly, it's the English-speaking countries like the UK, the US, Australia, and New Zealand that don't have national ID cards. Frankly, because native English speakers don't like tyranny. And the rest of the world clearly does. The Czechs know far more than Americans about tyranny, and yet they have a national ID card called the občanský průkaz. And if you're over the age of 15, you gotta have it. Since 2021, these Czech identity cards also have biometric information, like an eye scan and fingerprints. Americans watching this just came down with hives all over their bodies. Now, I don't know about those other English-speaking nations with their funky accents, but as an American, I can tell you that 48% of Americans want nothing to do with a national ID card. It's actually not just the cowboys living off the grid who don't like the idea. Both the far right and the far left, and absolutely none of the politicians will even consider advocating for it. It just doesn't fit the American brand. We prefer chaos and disorganization. Okay, that's not quite fair. Americans have several ways to identify ourselves. We have passports, but only 1/3 of Americans have passports. We have state-issued driver's licenses, but, not everybody drives. And of course, the aforementioned Social Security card, made of basically toilet paper and without a photo. In some states, you can prove who you are when you vote by using a utility bill that has your name on it. Obviously, that doesn't have a photo. And in some states, you can vote with a hunting license, but not with a student ID. Less than 70 years ago, many European countries had government lists that were used to round up undesirables and deport or murder them. So I'm kind of surprised that the Czechs don't mind letting the government keep track of them, what their name is, what they look like, and where they live. But a national ID is also quite practical, just to make a society function, which seems to align with the Czech mentality. Now, I grew up with the American mentality, so I think like a cowboy, and I'm in complete control of my own destiny. Or at least I was, until someone stole my Social Security number a few years back and bought lots of expensive jewelry in Beverly Hills and a BMW and tried to rent an apartment, all in my name, which ruined my credit. And I just felt like, meh, I'm only one man. What can I do about such things? But I also think that Americans are a little nuts for thinking that sharing info with the government will lead to tyranny. I mean, often police in America don't know where they can even locate people, fathers who haven't paid child support, or people on the run from committing crimes. They're just living off the grid, running up debts, hiding from the law. Pew, pew, pew. Americans willingly hand over all of their information to Zuckerberg and Bezos, even to credit bureaus, which control all of our data and don't do a good job protecting it. American versus Czech approaches to credit is a whole other video I'll have to make. Anyway, tell me in the comments below which country's approach to securing our personal identity seems to make more sense to you, the Czechs or the Americans. If you've ever had your identity stolen, especially if you live in Europe, let me know in the comments below with no identifying information. Tak, uvidíme se příště. Ahoj.